The other day, Trump sat down for an interview with Sean Ryan, who is a right wing shithead on YouTube who interviews other right wing shitheads. So, what a score it must have been for Sean to nab an interview with King Shithead himself, Donald Trump. And among the many topics they covered in the interview was climate change, about which Trump said this.
These poor fools talk about global warming all the time. You know, the planet's it's going to global warm to a point where the oceans will rise an eighth of an inch in 355 years. You know, they have no idea what's going to happen to weather.
What strikes me about that answer is that if you compare it to Trump's typical stock answer to questions about climate change, it's actually an improvement, which is not to say it's a remotely good answer. It's not. It's dishonest and inaccurate and self-serving and appeals to ignorance like Trump often does. He does the, well, nobody knows what's going to happen thing, which is completely inaccurate and misleading in this case, as well as most of the other cases where Trump employs that particular tactic. The consensus among scientists about the fact of climate change, the nature of climate change, the causes of climate change, the potentially catastrophic effects of climate change on human civilization. All of those things are broadly agreed upon and have been fairly consistent for many, many, many years now. So Trump trying to pull the, well, nobody even really knows what's going to happen thing, like that's just typical horseshit from Trump. But if you compare the answer that Trump gives in that interview to what he usually says, I think you'll see a little bit of a difference. For example, here's what Trump said in response to a question about climate change in the presidential debate between him and Joe Biden from this past June.
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
And here is what Trump said in response to a question about climate change in a debate between him and President Biden in the previous election cycle back in 2020.
I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it.
And you know what else I noticed as I watched those clips back to back is that Trump's stock answer on climate change up until this Sean Ryan interview has actually gotten worse, because in the 2020 clip that I just played you, at least Trump does get around to talking about stuff that seems to actually pertain to climate change. He does talk about emissions levels and that sort of thing. But what he usually does, what he nearly always does when he's asked about this in an interview, when it comes up in a debate, or even if he brings it up on his own in one of his stump speeches, when he has his little Klan rallies out on the road, he always starts talking about air and water quality. Whenever the subject comes up, President Trump, if you're reelected, what is your administration going to do about climate change? Do you consider climate change to be a priority for your administration? He always says, I want absolutely sparkling clean air and clean water. I want the cleanest, purest water possible, which is nice. I don't believe him for a second. I don't actually think he cares about clean water or clean air, unless we're talking about clean water on one of his fucking golf courses. I'm sure he would love to have nice crystal clear water on one of his golf courses because it looks nice. And that's all Trump really cares about anything at any level. Does it look nice? If it looks nice, it's fine. So he wants clean water for his golf course. Other than that, do I think he cares about water quality like throughout the country or throughout the world? No, I don't. And I think that not only because I feel like I have a pretty good sense of what a piece of shit he is as a human being, but also when he was president, he gutted the EPA. He pushed for deregulation, or allowed other people in his administration to push for deregulation. He doesn't care about the environment. He doesn't actually care about clean air or clean water because he tried to do as much as he could while he was president to remove the government regulations that help to guarantee that we do have clean air or clean water, at least sometimes. So I don't even believe him when he says that, but that's not really the problem with that answer to the question. The question is, what are you going to do about climate change? And his answer is, I want clean air and clean water. That's not the same thing. Which is not to say that air quality and water quality are not affected by climate change. Climate change is a big enough phenomenon that, yes, rising global temperatures and the various effects that those rising temperatures can have on the weather, yes, that can contribute to an effect in water quality, an effect in air quality, for sure. But when someone asks you about climate change and what is your administration going to do about climate change, and your default answer, your stock answer is, I want to have clean air and clean water, that just suggests to me that you don't actually know what climate change is. And you've just reached out into the air for something that sounds like an environmental issue. Oh, climate change, that's environmental as shit. What do I think? What do I say? Environmental, clean air, clean water. I want clean air, I want clean water. There, see, I'm pro-environment. And here's my whole point in bringing this up. I would really love it if the next time Trump is in any kind of setting where he's being interviewed or he's in a debate and the subject of climate change comes up and he starts going into his normal answer about, I want clean air and clean water, I would really love it if somebody would say, that's not climate change. That's not what we were asking you about. Can you please talk about climate change, not clean air and clean water, because those are related but distinct issues. We're asking about climate change. We're asking about rising average global temperature over time. We're talking about the potentially catastrophic effects that these could have on human civilization, the melting of the ice caps, the rising of sea levels, the increasing frequency of severe weather around the world, the problems that we will be facing in coming years and decades of climate refugees as more areas of the planet become uninhabitable or extremely difficult to inhabit and people are forced to move to other areas, and then people already in those areas are going to have to find some way of accommodating this new inrush of population. All of these issues that actually relate directly to climate change. And also, what are we going to do to try to mitigate it? What new standards are we going to set? What new requirements are we going to put on polluting industries, on industries that contribute to climate change, to try and dial back our emissions of gases that contribute to climate change? That's the kind of answer to the question that is called for. Instead of, I want clean air and clean water, right? That's what he always says. I would love for somebody, an interviewer, a debate moderator, Kamala Harris herself, to call Trump out on this and say, yeah, that's a nice sounding answer that you almost always give, but that has nothing to do with climate change, you fucking dolt. I don't think they're going to call him a fucking dolt. Kamala might. If you catch Kamala on the wrong night, or from my perspective, the right night, Kamala might call him a fucking dolt. Who knows? It would make my whole fucking year. But I would love for somebody, if there is another debate, if he doesn't chicken out of the next scheduled debate, and they have a debate on TV, whether the mics are muted or not, I don't care. If he actually goes through with the debate, him and Kamala Harris, and the subject of climate change comes up, which I imagine it will, because it's a pretty big topic, and he starts in on the clean air and clean water jag, I would love for somebody to point out to him, that's not climate change. You always default to clean air and clean water, and it's not climate change. I would love for somebody to correct him on that. It would just be nice. You know, it would just be nice if Kamala Harris doesn't do it herself in her answer to the question or her response to Trump's answer. Maybe one of the moderators could step in and say, you know, just as a factual matter, what you're talking about doesn't appear to actually address climate change, which was the subject of the question. If you could talk not about air and water quality, Mr. Trump, but if you could talk about climate change, that would be great. And that would be great if a moderator would do that, if a journalist charged with moderating a presidential debate would actually do their fucking job, in sharp contrast to what was done by the CNN moderators in the debate in June. That would just be nice. I'm just asking, as an American, as someone who cares about the future of this country, who cares about democracy, who fully intends to vote for Kamala Harris in November, and would like for lots of other people to do it too, and for other people who are maybe still on the fence, although I can't imagine why anyone would still be on the fence at this point, but I am told there are still people who are on the fence. They're not sure. Should I vote for Harris? Should I vote for Trump? Gee, I don't know. For those poor, lost, ignorant souls who are still somehow undecided in this election, to give them all the facts to make up their minds as to which way they should go when they finally hop off the fence. They should know that one of the candidates for President of the United States, in fact, a candidate who has been the President of the United States before, still, apparently, either doesn't know what climate change is or thinks that you don't know, and that you're enough of a bumpkin that when you hear him talking about clean air and clean water in response to an answer about climate change, you'll just find that acceptable. I think that's good information for the public to have, don't you?